Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
May I know your name and where you're from?
Absolutely. My name is Alexa, and I am from Austin, Texas. A better answer, I live in Austin, Texas. I'm from the US, but I'm American.
Can you tell me a little bit about your state?
Sure. So I live in Texas, which, if you know anything about Texas, it's probably known for like cowboys, cowgirls, Texas Ranger, cows, steaks. I live in Austin, Texas, which isn't exactly like that. It's a city, it's pretty liberal, it's pretty progressive. I've only lived there for 3 years, and I lived on the border before that, so I don't really consider myself Texan. I'm more of like a city girl, more cosmopolitan. I've lived around the world. But if you know of my state, then you probably know of it as Texas or cowboy, cowgirl country, I guess.
You know a bit of Spanish, right?
I do. I speak Spanish. Puedo hablar un poco de español. Aprendí español en México. Yo era maestra en el sur de México y también en la frontera. Enseñé inglés en una escuela de kinder y también enseñé estudios sociales en prepa. What I just said in Spanish was I lived in Mexico, and that's where I learned Spanish. And I taught English in a kindergarten school, and then I also taught social studies in high school.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about what's happening at the border?
Yeah, so I lived in Mexico for quite a while. I lived in southern Mexico, Puebla, Mexico, and then I also lived on the border. If you know anything about American immigration, it is very difficult to come to America, unfortunately, even to get a tourist visa or to get a refugee visa or asylum or to get a permanent residency. And in addition to that, the standard of living in the US is very different than its neighbors, basically all of Latin America. So many Latin Americans, most recently Hondurans, Guatemalans, Salvadorians, and then of course Mexicans, among many other nationalities, have tried to come to the US, and they try to cross the Mexican-American border. Unfortunately, the Mexican-American border is riddled with violence, narco trafficking, but it's also riddled with legal violence, and what I mean by that is Border Patrol. The immigration system is extremely broken, and living on the border, I witnessed everything from kidnappings, from narcos, to parents being deported by the Border Patrol, Customs. I visited children in immigration detention centers. I visited parents in immigration detention centers, children who were too afraid to leave their hometown because they might get caught, families that were deported, families that crossed the desert, kids that swam across the river, body bags on the way to school, parents who were imprisoned for smuggling humans or smuggling drugs. So it's a very unique society to live in, and I lived there for 6 years. Because it's two worlds that have come together between the narco trafficking and then the Border Patrol agencies. And unfortunately, the people that are caught in the middle really, really struggle from both.
Wow, there's a lot of things to digest, but thanks for sharing with me. So, what is your purpose of life, or what is your drive in your life?
It's interesting that you asked that, because sometimes I think that my purpose in life and my drive in life are not the same anymore. But my purpose in life, and I think, actually I'll answer that generally and then I'll get more specific. I think generally our purpose in life should be to do some sort of good on this earth. That might mean clean up a park, that might mean help a person, volunteer, give back. Because whether you believe in God or you don't, ultimately we're all gonna just die, right? We're gonna disintegrate on this earth. So what sort of mark did you leave? What sort of good did you do? And that really is one of the reasons that brought me to living on the border. I'm not from there. I got involved in immigration issues back in my home state, Georgia, where I'm originally from. And I got involved in immigration. I became more and more passionate about it. I decided I really wanted to go and make a change and do something. And I thought education is one lasting way that I could get involved. And so I moved to basically the front lines, the border, to get involved in education. I also founded some organizations, got involved in some volunteer groups. But ultimately, I think that that was my purpose at the time, or the way that I could see living out my purpose. Of course, that kind of work, the most meaningful work that you can do, is usually also the most exhausting work you can do. I was working something like 70 hours a week. And one of the reasons why I said I think sometimes your purpose and your drive change is because you eventually, it's often, or it's common, that you get burnt out. And so sometimes I think that right now, as you can see, I'm traveling. My drive is to enjoy, is to taste, to explore, to travel, to see new things, and frankly, to kind of live for myself. I don't know if that's necessarily my purpose, and I don't think that will always be my drive. But I've felt recently that the work that I did for many years was just so exhausting and so hard, and the stories that I lived through, or the stories I witnessed, the things that I saw, were so tiring that sometimes you just want to say, ugh, like I just want a vacation. And so right now I'm kind of taking a break from it all and enjoying traveling. But I think that I will go back to what I see as maybe my drive, or my passion, is immigration. And whatever anyone's passion is, I think they should find something meaningful to do that is more than just a selfish goal.
Okay, that's nice to know. You like to travel, and I'd like to know, what do you look or seek when you're traveling? Any particular thing?
What I look for or seek when I'm traveling is, I think, what we should all look for or seek when we travel. I kind of criticize people who travel, but they stay in a resort, they never leave the resort, or they go to Burger King and McDonald's and they eat that the whole time, or they just go and hang out with people from their own country and speak their own language. Because honestly, are you really traveling, or are you just distracting yourself? What I look for when I travel is I look for a new experience. I look to break out of my comfort zone. I look to better understand the world, or see something that I wouldn't normally find back at home. And yes, part of that is just a distraction. It's fun, it's interesting, it's new. But part of that, I think, is breaking out of my comfort zone and learning more about myself, and learning more about humanity, and learning more about this earth, and learning more about the world and human culture and nature, and maybe seeing things that won't be here in 50 years, or trying something that I would never be able to find anywhere else. And so when I travel, I look for a unique experience, something that you can't find anywhere else, something that will teach me something about myself, about the world, about humanity. That's ultimately what I look for when I travel.
Good to know as well. And I also like to ask you regarding your opinion, the difference between Malaysia and US. Because we share almost same flag, but what is the similarity and also the differences that you can share with us?
Honestly, very few similarities, other than maybe a sort of similar flag. And of course, there's a lot of commercialism, a lot of industry. You can see this is a very developed, advanced country. And of course, all humans share some similarities, but beyond the basic similarities, there are very few. Differences, though, are vast. Besides the obvious, it's a tropical country here. It's a Muslim country here. It's far more diverse than the US. I think that's one of the things that I have noticed the most. And whereas Americans, they might say, well, we're a melting pot in America, right? But what that really means is that when you come to America, you melt into the blend. And so even if you're Indian, Chinese, African, whatever you might be, you eventually all become American. You all kind of start to dress the same, eat the same, you all speak English. You really adopt the American culture. But in Malaysia, one of the unique things I've noticed is you see languages everywhere. You see different styles of dress everywhere. Yes, you see different ethnicities, just like you see in the US, but you can clearly tell that someone is from another country or they're still very much tied to their heritage or their home culture. You see cuisines from all over the world. And in America, we might have cuisines from all over the world, but they're all Americanized. Sure, we have pizza that's not actually American, but it's Americanized. We have tacos, but they're Americanized. And so one of the unique things I see about Malaysia versus maybe the US, if I were to give an analogy, the US is like a melting pot, whereas Malaysia is kind of like a salad bowl. There's many different mixes, but it's all still very intact to their heritage, their original culture.
So what do you like about Malaysia?
Oh man, well, you know, preface, this is my second day, but I am fascinated just watching the people. It's so different than what I see. So I love sitting and just listening to the different languages, seeing the way people dress, seeing the foods people eat, walking through a market and touching things I've never touched before, seeing foods I've never seen before. I love walking through a park and seeing animals that a Komodo dragon that I would never see back at home, or hearing a bird I've never heard before. I like that you can be in, you know, Little India and then Little China and then see Japanese writing, and it's very international, it's very intercultural, it's warm, and it's just so foreign to me that I guess the one thing that I like the most is that everything I see, everything I do, everything I touch is nothing like what I'm used to.
All right. What is the most amazing thing that you have done in your whole life, if you want to share?
Oh, sure. So I've done a lot of amazing things. I've been really, really fortunate to live life to the fullest. I've gone paragliding, I've gone bungee jumping, I've gone rock climbing, I've traveled to rich countries, poor countries, whatever. You know, I could keep going down the list. All kinds of amazing experiences. But honestly, I think the most amazing thing that I've done is just simply being fortunate enough to be able to do those things. So essentially what's so amazing about my life, frankly, is that I've been fortunate enough to go and see an African village. I've been fortunate enough to climb to the tallest building in the world. I've been fortunate enough to try some weird smelly fruit that everyone's afraid of, or eat a cricket, or swim in deep oceans, snorkel, look out of planes and see different continents. I think honestly, the ability to travel in and of itself is amazing. And if you really truly want to explore, and again, not McDonald's and resorts and your bubble, but actually seeking to find new, that's amazing, right? And I know that I'm privileged. I know that I'm very fortunate to be able to say that I can do that. And so I'm very thankful, and every day I'm thankful for that. And I think it's just amazing to be able to go and explore new walks of life.
Lastly, can you share with us your, I don't know, favorite saying or phrases?
Seek the unknown. If you haven't already kind of picked it up, I've kind of like mentioned that in a few of my responses, but anything you're afraid of, that you've never tried, people you think are different than you, something you think that you can't try, you can't conquer, you don't want to know, you don't want to experience it, you can't do it. If you challenge yourself, or you step out your comfort zone, or you get to know someone that doesn't look like you, or doesn't live like you, or doesn't act like you. You try a food that looks weird or smells weird. You try a new sport that you never thought you could manage or never thought you could do. You'll probably realize that you can do it, or that it's not that weird, or that they're not that different, or that you actually have a lot of similarities, or you might enjoy something more than you think you did. And on top of it all, the more that you seek the unknown, the more open-minded you are to different. And I think that a lot of our problems with racism and xenophobia and fear and the other is people are just unwilling to seek the unknown. And so if I could give one phrase or recommendation, it's seek the unknown, because you will learn a lot about yourself, you'll learn a lot about the world, and you'll open your mind to new things.
Thank you very much for this interview. I wish you very good travel, and maybe see you next time. Thank you very much.